Good afternoon. I'm Chester County District Attorney Christopher Deverna-Sarobe. I'm joined today by a variety of law enforcement partners, and I want to start by introducing them. To my left is FBI Special Agent in Charge Wayne Jacobs. Thank you for coming today. He's joined by his Assistant Special Agent in Charge Gabriel Poling. To my right is Westchester Police Chief Joshua Lee, followed by Lieutenant Mo Natachowski from the Chester County Detectives and Lieutenant Adam Sibley of the Chester County Sheriff's Office. Together, we are here to provide an update on the investigation into Kevin Krebs. As you know, the defendant was arrested on June 14th, 2025, walking up to a national No Kings rally or protest in Westchester, really just 2 blocks away from this courthouse. He was charged with carrying a concealed firearm without a license. Then, on June 16th, he was charged with possession of 13 improvised explosive devices, or IEDs, after they were discovered as part of a search warrant at his home. I'm obligated to remind everyone that the defendant is presumed innocent until proven guilty in both of these cases. We continue to investigate whether this entire incident amounted to a thwarted act of domestic terrorism. But in the end, we have a ton of work to do before we can make that determination. But one thing is absolutely clear. The work of Chester County law enforcement prevented an incredibly dangerous situation from unfolding at the No Kings rally in Westchester that Saturday. I want to start by talking more about June 14th. As thousands of people came together to exercise their constitutional rights to assemble and to protest, police were alerted to a man with a gun by a private citizen. Westchester Police Department patrol officers and Chester County sheriffs approached the defendant. He was dressed in multiple layers of clothing. The defendant was immediately cooperative with the Westchester police officer that interacted with him. He identified that he had a handgun in the holster underneath a layer of clothing near his abdomen, and he actually allowed that officer to remove it herself. He had 2 additional magazine cartridges for that gun on his person. He claimed to have a permit to carry a concealed firearm, but in fact did not have one issued to him. On a separate jacket, the defendant also had 6 clips of ammunition on him for a rifle. That rifle had been left behind in his car. The Westchester Police Department quickly called the FBI, and together they interviewed the defendant and members of the defendant's family. Family has reported to law enforcement that the defendant is on the autism spectrum. The defendant explained to Westchester Police and the FBI that he planned to peacefully protest and brought the gun because he wanted to remain safe. He was charged that evening with possession of a concealed firearm without a license. In Pennsylvania, that's a misdemeanor in the 1st degree. And he was remanded on $250,000 bail at the time. So after hearing that, these facts and some others that were developed over the next few hours, my office partnered with the Westchester Police Department to execute a search warrant at the defendant's home on the 16th. While searching for firearms and other evidence of the defendant's intent, law enforcement found what appeared to be a pipe bomb, which is a type of IED. The Montgomery County Bomb Squad was called out and in the end located 13 of them. Those IEDs were turned over to the FBI and they continue to be examined. Inside the home, police found another firearm, a homemade silencer, a 3D printer, what appears to be 2 3D printed machine gun conversion devices, sometimes called switches or selectors, that could turn some of the rifles and handguns into fully automatic firearms. As part of the investigation, law enforcement also seized a number of electronics, including a cell phone, computers, and a computer server. In total, we have obtained 21 firearms that belong to the defendant. Since last week, this team has spent time coordinating and sharing information with a variety of law enforcement agencies, including Capitol Police, the ATF, and the U.S. Attorney's Office of Philadelphia. We've conducted interviews, reviewed available social media posts, and submitted legal process to search other types of media. We've reviewed the defendant's employment records, worked to ensure the defendant did not have access to other areas where he could have been making more IEDs. And we've learned a few things so far, but certainly there's a lot more data for us to review. But currently I can say we have not located any sort of manifesto or pre-written plan to commit an act of terrorism at the No Kings protest or at any other location. This arrest happened the same day as lawmakers in Minnesota were assassinated. And I want to be clear, right, that this has no connection, that is a coincidence. We have nothing to see that any of this could have been connected as we all look back on that horrific case. But that said, we are still looking to gain as much insight into Kevin Krebs as possible, his bomb-making history, his mindset, and we're asking the public for help. If anyone has information about Kevin Krebs, we're asking you to call the Chester County Detectives or the FBI Newtown Square office. You can contact the Chester County Detectives at 610-344-6866 and the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI. This case started with a member of the public seeing something and saying something, and we need to continue to have members of the public see things and say things so that we can do everything in our power to make sure that the public is safe. So even assuming the defendant had the best of intentions, I want to make perfectly clear that the Westchester Police Department and the Chester County Sheriffs negated an incredibly dangerous situation. Just look at what happened in Salt Lake City, Utah at the same No Kings protest the same day. There, someone who was open carrying as a protector opened fire when they saw someone, in their view, be threatened, and killed an innocent protester and shot another person as a result. They've been charged. This is the sort of dynamic that was negated by local law enforcement because they took a report from the public and acted on it. Now, I want to take a chance to turn the microphone over to Special Agent in Charge Jacobs to share his perspective from the FBI. Chief Lee will make some comments afterwards, and then I'll conclude with some final remarks before opening up for questions.
Thank you, DA. Again, my name is Wayne Jacobs. I'm Special Agent in Charge of the FBI's Philadelphia office. Just want to make some brief comments this afternoon and just start by thanking the partners who are here, partners who are not here. I think the response to the events on the 14th and the follow-on logical investigation are a model for what law enforcement does day in and day out, which is leverage relationships to arrive at the best potential outcomes that we can. So I do want to take a minute to recognize the Westchester Police Department, Chester County District Attorney's Office, Chester County Detectives and Chester County Sheriffs, Montgomery County Sheriff's Office Bomb Squad, the Westtown East Goshen Regional Police, and the East Whiteland Township Police, and finally the ETF, all played critical roles. Each component agency, each individual contributed again to the outcome in terms of mitigating a potential threat on the 14th. And also echoing the DA and his comments and recognizing the actions of the citizen who reported suspicious activity to law enforcement. We talk a lot about seeing something and saying something, and again, the events on the 14th are a reminder of the shared responsibility between the public and law enforcement in ensuring the security that all of us enjoy day in and day out. Finally, I just want to remark about the way forward. Again, as the DA mentioned, this is still very early on in the investigation. We, the FBI, along with the partners, the ATF, and alike the U.S. Attorney's Office, will continue to support the DA in his office, the detectives, in whatever way they see fit and appropriate. We talked about the analysis that's going on with the pipe bombs, other technical exploitation interviews, what have you. Whatever the ask is, we stand here ready to support. This partnership is the foundation of our work. My thanks again to all the partners here and not here. I'll turn it over to Chief Lee for his remarks.
Thank you, Special Agent in Charge Jacobs, and thanks to all the law enforcement partners here. I'm Josh Lee, and I'm the Chief of the Westchester Police Department. On Saturday, June 14th, Westchester police officers were working a detail for the No Kings rally that was held here in Chester County on the steps of the historic Chester County Courthouse. while working that detail, a plainclothes police officer was approached by a witness, a member of the public, who pointed out an individual and had concerns that that individual was concealing a weapon under his clothes. The individual was contacted by Westchester police officers and ultimately identified as Kevin J. Krebs. As you heard before, Krebs was found in possession of a handgun in violation of Pennsylvania's Uniform Firearms Act. He was arrested by Westchester police officers and was immediately cooperated with those officers. Our officers quickly determined that there was no known additional threat to the event. I'd like to take a moment to thank that member of the public. I'd like to take a moment to highlight that we have some of the best citizens here in Chester County, some of the best law enforcement here in Chester County, and this is a perfect example of how citizens and law enforcement can come together for the greater good, for the good of the community. I'm extremely proud of that resident, extremely proud of the Westchester police officers. Please remember that we all play a part in the community safety, and like you heard before, if you see something, say something to a member of law enforcement. We'll continue to work closely with the members of the partner agencies, including the FBI and the Chester County District Attorney's Office. And please remember that when you come and visit Chester County and visit Westchester, it's a lovely, vibrant area. We have plenty of special events, plenty of outdoor events. Please know that every one of those events is planned for and policed accordingly. So thank you.
So before I turn things over for questions, I want to touch on three things. First, I know there are a lot of big picture questions like what caused this? What does this say about our society? How could this happen? Who's to blame? None of us have answers to these types of questions today, and there's really a good chance that we're not going to be able to answer them. What we have done, though, is we followed the evidence in this case, and we continue to, and we have been ruling out potential threats to the community. And I'm really proud of what this team has done to ensure public safety. Second, in the coming days, I'm certain that we'll see online commentators and social media personalities try to cherry pick facts from this press conference to score political points along party lines. Don't listen to the nonsense. This arrest is not something that can be distilled down to a social media post. It can't be fed into some short video that an algorithm feeds us online. This is a unique case. It has a ton of nuance. It's rare that it occurs, and there's a lot to work through. None of those commentators have any idea what they're talking about. But to the extent that we do want to talk about politics, let this arrest be an idea about how we can strengthen our laws in Pennsylvania and how we can make sure that we have public safety and funding for public safety. Pennsylvania remains one of the states that does not outlaw switches, these machine gun conversion devices. I don't understand how in today's day and age they remain legal at the state level. Alabama passed a law making them illegal. We can do the same here in Pennsylvania. We also need to think about safe, thoughtful ways to have no flag laws, to give police, red flag laws, to give police the opportunity, based on information from the public, to temporarily disarm someone who's suffering from some sort of mental health crisis and that has access to firearms so that they can get well again. And they can do something before shooting starts. And finally, funding is incredibly important to our local law enforcement. We need more money so that we can train our officers to respond, to buy tools that allow us to patrol and work these protests and make safety even greater than it is today. Because in the end, while our federal partners are always there when we call on them, it's the officers that are working the events that have to respond immediately. And they deserve to have every tool at their disposal as well. So I want to thank everybody on this stage for their partnership, the officers and investigators and prosecutors who worked hard over the past 10 days, many of whom are working right now as we speak, and all the partners that everyone here has mentioned and some that I'm sure we've forgotten along the way. The ability to peacefully assemble and to protest is one of the hallmark constitutional rights that we all have. And in Chester County, we're gonna make sure that every citizen can safely do exactly that. We're gonna protect your fundamental American rights. Thank you. Open up for questions.
Mr. DA, given what Mr. Krebs was found with, the loaded gun, loaded magazines, knives, a ski mask, and gloves, why not request and execute a search warrant that day?
Well, this is a case where we had a misdemeanor, right, of carrying a firearm without a license. And so what we did was we took the information, we sat down, we questioned ourselves as a group and really came together and decided to execute a search warrant as soon as we could follow the legal process, and we got that together on Monday. But we didn't expect to walk into that house and find explosive devices. Like, let's be perfectly clear, that's not what the search warrant was for. But we absolutely wanted to come together and make sure that the public was safe, and as we worked through the details as a group Sunday into Monday, we made that call and did it.
You mentioned that there were new details over the weekend that made you go back and file the search warrant. Can you share what some of those details were?
Sure, I mean, we've learned, for example, that he had a number of firearms that were registered to him beyond what was in his possession and in his car. And so that's one of the one of the details that we wanted to work through to make sure that that we were getting all the firearms from him if he were to be released on bail.
He's told you that he wanted to be safe when he protested, or when he took part in this protest, or came to the protest. Have you asked him why he needed all those guns and why he allegedly built pipe bombs or any of those? What's his reasoning there?
Right, once the first arrest comes, right, then it triggers certain rights that he has, and so we're gonna leave that part alone. But that's why we're doing an investigation, right? We are going to see if he wants to talk to us. We would absolutely listen in the future. Right now, we're working through everything that we have, including his cell phone and other things, to see if there's any sign of his intent.
Did he indicate to you what position he had about that protest? Was he opposed to No King's Day? Was he supportive of it? Was he?
I think as we are working through all of that, right, because I don't want to take any one individual's word for anything, but we are working through all of that. What I will say is that I think he's not necessarily someone, with the information we have from family and some things that we've been looking at, he's not necessarily a super partisan person where he's going to do all what one party says and all what one party doesn't say. But he was there because he wanted to protest some of the policies of the Trump administration.
Mr. Krebs wrote on social media about attending the Tesla protest on May 17th, where he and other protesters were attacked by a Ford truck rolling coal. He said in his post the cops did nothing. I spoke with the West Town East Goshen interim police chief. They said they spoke with the driver and took appropriate action. Can you provide more info on that incident, and do you think it may have had an impact on why he came to the No Kings protest with a gun?
I can provide just that I'm aware of that incident. We have been investigating his presence there, but I can't give you unique insight into what is going through his brain with regard to that.
Did he have a gun switch? You mentioned the gun switch, but is that something that he was found in possession of?
He was not, when he was taken into custody on the 14th, he did not have that on him, and it was not in his car.
Chris,
Was it in his house though? Sorry, just to clarify.
It is in the house, yes.
Okay.
you mentioned that snippets would be taken, and there's a lot of nuance. Understanding we've been sitting here for 20 minutes, not asking you to rehash everything, but what's the important nuance to keep in mind when you look at this case, and we have to put this together in a minute and a half? What's the important nuance for us to keep in mind as we do that?
Yeah, I'm sorry to laugh, but the
No.
minute and a half is always, a task that I don't envy for you folks here. So thank you for your work at doing that. Pennsylvania is an open carry state, right? So if someone wanted he has a right to have firearms, he just didn't have a right to have it concealed. So on one hand, we're trying to balance rights versus is this an act of terrorism versus is this someone who's fascinated with explosives, right? And that's why we want to be fair to everyone. We're here to sort of make sure that our I was fearful I wanted to come here today because I felt like we hadn't gotten out and addressed the situation, and the members of the community might be fearful based on that. We're here doing everything we can to make sure that the community is safe. I think we've done that. We're going to continue to cross things off of our list, But we feel like we're in a really good spot here to say that we have the main actor in custody, the actor in custody really, and that everyone is safe. And we're gonna continue to work through it to determine whether it meets some FBI threshold, like sort of internal looking about a larger terrorism cell piece, which is not present currently, or whether this is someone who's just fascinated with explosives. And that's what we look at.
So if that gun wasn't concealed, he wouldn't have been breaking any laws and he would have never been detained, correct?
I don't know if he wouldn't have been approached or detained or questioned, right? Like,
But
I
that's
think
the only
is
law he
ability,
broke.
but that's the only law he broke that morning is that, yes.
The new guns that were found, were they found in the East Whiteland home?
So the vast majority of the guns were turned over to law enforcement by his family. I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear. There was one additional gun that was found in the home.
Is he facing charges on possession of those weapons yet?
Not currently, and we're looking into whether any of those firearms break certain firearms laws, but he's allowed to. He's a person that is able to possess firearms. So unless there's a defect with them, they've been modified in some way, he's allowed to possess firearms.
Wasn't the court order in his bail that he turn over all weapons?
Correct, that was done through his family, with the exception of one that we.
Okay, and it's just that they took some time to do that, to gather them up?
I'd have to look at what the timing is, Mike, on that. Sorry, I don't have that precise information, but yes, it does take some time, and I don't know exactly when the court decided to release him when he posted his bail.
And were those guns taken from both his home and his parents' home, or just his?
Just his home. The one gun was found in his home. The rest of the two firearms were taken from him at the protest. One on him, one at his car.
Right.
The remaining of firearms we received from his family.
You mentioned the red flag laws. Was this the case where people had called about him beforehand? Had his family called concerned about his behavior before?
No, we don't have any of that from the FBI, but part of the problem is we don't know who people, if people know there are no red flag laws, what's the point of calling? Right, so it's a chicken or egg problem for us. Is like, if we don't have the law and people don't feel like we can do anything about it, then why are they gonna put themselves out there?
Well, they didn't think he was dangerous then.
Wouldn't
that be incentive?
I don't know, we're gonna be doing interviews and talking to people, right? But if we had a red flag law, then we could say, then maybe, if we had a red flag law, maybe people would come forward. That's my point.
The bigger picture is that when you say red flag law, you're talking about potential mental instability within the spectrum, and is that a thing that's out there for purchasing guns?
No, I'm trying to understand the question a little bit more, but red flag laws, and there are a variety of them across the country, right, deal with people who are in some sort of mental health crisis and incapable of, in someone's belief, they need to be evaluated before they can get their guns back. Every state's had different nuances to those. I have no idea whether they would apply to his being on the autism spectrum or not, but that's how those laws work. And in the end, we need every tool we can to make sure that we are achieving that balance of upholding people's constitutional rights and keeping people safe. These laws have been upheld before, and it's another tool that we could use in Pennsylvania to be able to do that.
What are the laws regarding pipe bombs or IEDs? Is it illegal to have them, or?
Yes, right beyond like the basic fireworks, right, that are legal, right, and I can write some more or send you some more information on precise detail of what the mixture is, but they're both federally illegal and they're both illegal in Pennsylvania.
So is it fair to say, from what you're telling us, that that's a criminal act? Now the investigation is looking to see if there was a broader intent.
Broader intent, broader concern and insight, right? Whether these are things that will apply at trial or sentencing, I'm not sure, right? But these are all things that we are looking forward to make sure, right? We don't feel like there's anybody else involved right now, but we are going to make sure that no one else is involved. We don't feel like there's any other locations, but we did spend some time looking into and excluding the fact, for example, that he had a storage locker or not. These are all things that we worked through.
So could he be federally charged as well?
Yes, I've spoken with U.S. Attorney David Metcalf. We've all agreed that we're going to keep conducting the investigation and make some decisions in the coming weeks about whether he'll be prosecuted federally only, or prosecuted federally at the state, or prosecuted only at the state level, or a mixture of both, right? Because those switches are federally illegal. And so there is a lot of, there's a lot of different paths this can go. We're gonna make that decision in a couple weeks.
Do you think he made the switches?
There's a 3D printer there, and they appear to be something that's 3D printed in the material that's being used. But beyond that, like, we're working to confirm that, and we've seized the 3D printers for an analysis.
Do you know where he bought these guns? I mean, have you had contact with the gun shops, and do you know?
We're working through all those details about how he came in possession of those guns, what dealers he bought them from, all that stuff. We want to make sure they were purchased legally.
Did he alter them in any way? Beyond having a switch?
That's what we're working through. So whether he altered them or whether some of them have been altered. But there's possibility of a sawed-off shotgun, for example. Those are things we're working through.
How many completed bombs did he have?
So I don't know that we have that final analysis. They're working through that examination, and that examination takes time because they want to do, from what I understand, like, everything from the exterior and fingerprints and things like that, but also the explosive device itself.
So then my follow-up would be then how did you come to the 13 counts of weapons of destruction that they had?
So we have probable cause to believe those things, right? So based on how they were found, the powders that were around there, a lot of other evidence, like we felt like we had probable cause to be able to do that. But if you're asking, for example, like how big of an explosion would it make, those sort of things, we don't have that technical reality.
And to confirm, he wasn't a known entity to local law enforcement. It wasn't a case where, neighbors had called before.
No, we don't have, we checked with the FBI. We don't have any sort of prior concern from the public about him.
Do you think he has mental health challenges?
And we're gonna find that out, I assume, as part of the criminal process, but that's up to him and his defense attorney.
Just to confirm, he was out there alone at the protest.
Sorry, what?
Was he out there alone at the protest?
Yes.
Talk to his brother. He lived with his brother?
Yes.
Now, so his parents turned over that sort of group of guns, or his brother turned over the group of guns?
I'd have to check, but I believe it was his parents that turned over the grouping of guns. I'm not sure how his brother was involved, his family. So I think what's clear is his family has been cooperative, and they've talked with us, and that's how we call it. They've been very cooperative with us, and obviously turning the guns that they can find.
And those guns were at his house, at their house, not at his. The family actually knew that he possessed these guns, and they were in their home, and they brought them to you. Is that right?
I don't know my understanding, but I'm not 100%. My understanding is they were at his house. They went and got them at his house.
Can you fill the gap as to, once he was, his family paid his bail and he was out till when you guys arrested him again, what was he doing during that time frame?
He was with his family, wasn't allowed to go back to his house, is my understanding, and he was sort of he was staying at his parents' house and in their purview. All right, well, if there are no other questions, thank you folks for coming out today.